All right. Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. Well, welcome everybody to the Ask an Accountant podcast, where we demystify accounting by simply asking your pressing questions to the industry's best and brightest. My name's Tony Wilson, your host, quirky friend, and total accounting nerd. Today I'm joined by my friend Kirk Cole, a CPA with over 15 years of experience in audit, tax, and consulting services. He's the founder of Simple Accounting Solutions, which is a financial services firm that leverages cloud-based accounting and administrative technologies to bring your business effective workflows at cost-efficient prices. Kirk, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Tony. I've really been looking forward to doing this for quite a bit. I mean, you're prolific online, right? And the story's really cool, and the guests are all super cool. And I was like reading through a list of everyone who's been on it. It's all the names that I know, and I'm like, man, I'm so fortunate to be part of this club now, part of this list. So it's something that, yeah, I appreciate and thank you. You know, I look forward to just like talking today.
Yeah, it's going to be so good. And likewise, I mean, I know we connected actually a while back. Shout out to Stephen Pope, who I can't remember how we got in contact with one another, but it was probably through another LinkedIn post. And he's like, hey, you know, you should have Kirk on your show. This was like probably like a month and a half or 2 months ago. And I was like, oh, I totally got to do it. And then just totally dropped the ball and hadn't reached back out to you until I was like, oh, shoot, I do need to have Kirk back on the show. So,
Oh my God!
yeah.
Shout out to Stephen Pope. That guy's I've known that guy a long time, and yeah, it was funny because you reached out, and then I was like, "You're like, I'll be in touch next week." And I was
Right,
like, I didn't
right.
hear from you for like 2 months. And I'm like,
Many weeks.
I
I'm
guess
like,
I didn't make
oh,
I didn't
no.
make the list. I didn't get in. He got bounced out.
No, not the case at all. I have a list. This morning, I went on a walk. And I pulled out my phone and I'm like, I am going to organize myself because I feel so bad. Shout out to all those folks out there who I've said, hey, you're going to be on my show. And then I just never followed up because I'm like, I just need to start making plans now because I think I have like a list of like 10 to 15 people. And I'm like, I got to have them on my show. So anyway, I appreciate your patience with me.
Sure.
But now we finally get to dive in.
Yeah.
And ask some really fun and exciting questions. Well, let me just give some background. I mean, we already shared a little bit about like, you know, you've been doing this for 15 plus years. But just on a personal side, last week, Kirk and I finally got to meet each other. We had our first call where we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, what we want to talk about on the show. And I just want to say, from my experience, it was an instant connection. And I think what it is, and you know, people who are watching this, who know Kirk, you know that he's just this super down to earth. He's personable. He's warm. He's inviting, and you're just like fun to be around.
Oh, thanks.
So that's my
We swiped right together,
That's
right?
right.
And we connected instantaneously. It's really easy. I love talking to other accountants, right? I mean, especially like I think. And get a little lonely when all your clients are not accountants. You know what I mean? So you're talking to all non-accounting people all day. It's very nice to talk to accountants. And I feel the same way about you that you feel about me.
That's awesome. Well, that's why it's match made in heaven. But you know what was so cool though is, you know, usually, you know, when I'm prepping for these shows, usually what I'll do is I'll be like, okay, let's try to figure out the questions that I'm going to ask so that we can kind of highlight my guest. And from the very beginning, Kirk was like, dude, I'd love to interview you too.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like,
sure.
That's going to be a first for our show. Let's do it. Why not? Let's just
you have a story to tell. You have a product. You have dreams, hopes, desires. You have a story, right? Everyone should know the Tony story.
Oh, I love that. So purely for selfish reasons, I was like, okay, I'll take you up on that offer. I'll let you kind of cross interview. So for everybody out there today, we're going to be doing a little bit of a special episode where it's going to be like a back and forth. I'm going to ask Kirk some questions. He's going to ask me some questions. And together, we're going to demystify a little bit more of accounting and the accounting industry.
Yeah.
And it's going to be so much fun. But before we hop into that, Kirk, I want to give you an opportunity to catch us up to speed. Let our listeners know a little bit more about your story. I mean, right now you're running this really cool Simple Accounting Solutions. You've got a decent sized team. You got a following. But that didn't happen overnight, right? Like it took
Yeah.
time to get there. So talk us through your story. Where do you
Sure.
begin? Your origin story. Go for it.
Sure. Sure. So born in Los Angeles, Sunset Boulevard Children's Hospital. Grew up in LA. Went to school in Manhattan Beach for high school, and that's where I currently am right now. So go to high school. We go to college in Santa Cruz, Northern California. And at Santa Cruz, I'm like trying to be a lawyer basically because I like to argue. But it turns out like I don't really like to read. So then like they're like, well, I was taking an accounting class. And I remember like sophomore year being like, okay, I like called my dad. I was like, I really think I can do this. I really think this all makes sense to me. He's like, well, I don't know. You're up north. It's 2002. You should be in comp sci. I'm like, I don't like comp sci. I'm gonna go with accounting. The first of many fateful decisions of my life, right? So fell in love with it up there. Was just an awful student. Got barely C's get degrees was kind of the mantra, right? I actually graduated with 2 degrees. Did in 4 years. And, like that was cool. I was like, yeah, I can do the school thing, but like the quality of the grades was maybe not that great. So whatever. I'm like, all right, done with college. Like I've got this accounting degree. I've got like a politics degree. I'm gonna go down south back to LA, right? And I'm gonna my best friend from college and some other friends. We're all gonna move into a house down in like say a house. It's really an apartment on Sunset and La Brea, right? And we're like, we're gonna make it in the movies. Right, we're gonna all be movie stars. Entourage is really big at this point, so we're just like watching Entourage, and then it turns out none of us can act. So that dream quickly dies, and I go to start work as basically an accountant for a video game company because I love video games. I grew up playing video games,
Yeah.
90s, early 90s, Super Mario's. I was like, cool. This is 2007, 2008. I'm gonna get into video games, but also like I'm gonna be an accountant at a video game company. And so what happened is my first boss, her name was Corinne. She's amazing, right? She's an amazing, and I mean you always hear it all the time. You want to choose jobs based on who your boss is and not necessarily what the job is. 100% true, right? And I've had good bosses, I've had bad bosses, and the good bosses are like life changing. Right, they change your life. The bad ones you just want to get away from as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
But the good ones, right? So I was very fortunate that I got her. That job lasted 2 years. '08 recession hit. Everyone got laid off. Took 6 months. Passed the exams, and then I went to work for Mark Cuban. Owned a bunch of like theater entertainment properties out here.
Hold on for 1 second.
Sure.
So for in a period of 6 months, I mean, granted, you were able to take some time off, but 6 months, you passed all 4 parts of your CPA exam.
Yeah.
Dude, nice.
You know what I tell my staff this too, and I'm like, I did it in 6 months, and they're like, Kirk, you're unemployed. I was like, that doesn't matter. You should be able to do it working 50 hours a week and studying the other 10. They're like, how'd you do it? I'm like, I slept with the 2 Becker guys, Peter Olinto, and I mean those guys became real close, right? They don't know me, but I know them.
I feel the same way. I feel the same way.
Every CBA feels the same way. Like I was like trying to go through Wiley or and I was reading the books on the beach and going surfing or whatever, and then like once I got serious, like it just was like, okay, I can test. I think BEC, FAR, audit, reg was my order. Kind of in my order, and BEC was kind of notoriously the easiest one.
Oh yeah.
And then FAR, I had the most experience because I had done basically private accounting up till that point, so I got it. Audit, like I kind of knew audit, so I got it. And then tax was hard for me. Like I really had to work on tax. So got through all 4 of it, and then it took me like 2 years to pass ethics because I was like, there's no time limit. Who cares? You know what I mean? And so like I remember just like on ethics, like they wouldn't tell you which ones you got wrong, right?
Yeah,
so they give you a list, and you had 3 chances, and then you had to pay enough. I was emailing like the CBA, like, hey, listen, like I'm on chance number 3. I really don't want to pay you another $250. Can you give me like another couple chances for free? Anyway, so got through ethics. Went to go work for Cuban-owned outfits out here, like Landmark Theaters and Magnolia Pictures and distribution. Basically, it was a vertical for movie making, and that was cool. I was there for 4, and that really kind of made me on the corporate side. Left there, did a quick stint somewhere else, and then I went to public, which is not typical. Usually people go in public and then go to private, but was private, and then went to public. And then at public, I just wanted to audit, basically, audit and tax. Like, I wanted to learn from people who had really were experts in both those disciplines. And so that was a couple of years. I met the people who taught me there. I still work with, right? I mean, like, my tax director currently is someone who I met at that firm. Like, another tax person. There are a lot of, that was a very impactful firm. But the other side of firms, and this will probably play to a lot of people out there, is like, man, I am not good at reporting up. That's a hard way to say it. It's very hard for me to operate in the firm environment. I'm just kind of like, this is the firm box. Like, I'm like over there in Pluto. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I'm like, I don't really think we need to keep track of time. I don't really see that. Just bill them whatever. Who cares? You know what I mean? What do you mean? You want me every day? Screw you. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, okay, like 8 hours admin. Go. What are you gonna do? Fire me? I'm too. You know what I had a really big ego too, right? And like, but that was tempered by the fact that I was like, they're like, well, you're obviously really good at talking to people, so we just want you to talk to people all the time. But then I would tell them, like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I just want to do tax and audit. Like, I just want to develop technically. Anyway, so that was 13 to 15. Left at 15, and then went out, and probably, like, similar to a lot of other people who are watching this, you just go straight into CFO work, right? Because you've graduated from the staff and the senior staff and the manager and the firm, and you're like, I'm just gonna go run the whole show. And I was very lucky. Like, my first client was pretty sized, 20, 25, 30 million on the top end. So they had a decent amount of activity, and their accounting was a mess, right? And like, they were cool. They're in Orange County. Like, still a client today. Like, I love them very much, right? Like, it's one thing I tell people: you never forget your first, right? Your first is always to you. That was the one that made or break me, and it made everything. Because after that, I was able to go and build a business off just them as an anchor, and then just developing outside of it. Here we are today. So that's a quick little bit of my story, just from the accounting side of things.
That's super cool.
I'm going to ask you the same about yours, but I know, like, we'll ask it later. Something like that.
Yeah. I mean, we'll for sure get into it when we're interrogating each other. But Kirk, that's a super cool background. I think I'm glad that you mentioned that piece where it's not common to go from private into public. Usually it's always you start off in public and then you work your way into a private industry. Well, I guess maybe one follow-up question I have for you on that is, from your experience now, having done private industry first and then going into public, do you feel like your perspective, or like, how do you feel like your perspective was different than maybe some of your peers in public accounting?
I was super strong. I'd kill everyone else.
Really?
Because you first of all, my foundation was strong, right? Because I'd actually worked it, right? A lot of people were coming into the public. They've only worked school public, right? So they've only worked school audit, where if I'd come in and had to do GL, AP, collections, AR, internal corporate management. Like, you just understood how, and at the time, I think the company, the company previous to working public, I think, was like 100 million or something on the top line, maybe 150, maybe 200 million or something like that. So it's a sizable organization. And so you understood, like, how those companies worked, right? Or at least on some degree. I felt like I had that knowledge. And then when I came to the firm, like, a lot of my peers had, like, they had only worked in public, you know what I mean? So they'd only seen little glimpses of each other company. So, where they're like, they're trying to look through the GL and, like, trying to figure out what the client, like, I know what the client's doing. That was what I did. You know what I mean? So I had, like, a really good understanding of how, we're auditing, like, whether it was a private company or whatever. Like, I understood what the ledger said, as opposed to, like, trying to, like, figure it out or trying to tie things out. Like, I knew what mattered. So I felt like it was a tremendous advantage. The downside of that is that I had to start late, right? I didn't start until I was 2013, 27 in public, maybe, something like that, maybe 26, 27, which is later than most people start public at 22, right? So yeah, I think but to me, if you're willing to delay, and then I took a pay cut, right, to go, because I was like, I knew if the experience was, like, natural. So if you're willing to take the pay cut and you're willing to, do the work, you'll come into the firm, I think, with just a tremendous, a better skill set as compared to the others, right, that are in there.
Totally. totally the case. Yeah. And I feel like I remember when I was working in public accounting, there was actually maybe like one or two people that I knew that did have private industry experience first. And I remember their perspective being so, it felt so much more grounded. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't just this theoretical thing that they were dealing with. It was like, oh yeah, I've actually been there. I've actually booked journal entries. One of the things we talk about in like the corporate world as we assess, like, oh yeah, this person has public accounting experience, which is great on a resume. Let me just put that out there.
Sure.
But one of the things we talk about is, well, does this person have any private industry experience? Because if they don't, like if they've never booked an entry in their life, there's a learning curve there.
Huge. Huge.
So
huge. And I think it can be baggage too, right? I mean, you know, and listen, the world's changes all the time with this stuff. And I understand that, like, the ideal is, you know, probably Big Four for 4 to 5 years. Maybe you're senior looking to go manager. And if you don't go manager, you go be manager private, right? At a big public of 10,000 employees. And like, that's a career path. That's the prototypical move. But, when you look at those individuals over a 10 or 15 year span, like, they're boxed, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like they know one thing and they know it very well, but there's a whole world. You know what I mean? Like, then they can be really good at like accounting, but it's often like they can't even read a tax return. I'm like, what?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I've said, I think there's like a general rule that's out there. It's like an unspoken rule, at least that I grew up in, that says that you should be in public accounting for like 5 years. You should make it to manager and then you can leave. And I'm like, I was only in it for 2 years and I felt like I got a ton of the right experience. And I was like, I'm done.
That's enough. 2 years is enough, straight up.
If anything, like, I think one thing that's really strong about learning public accounting management is that public accounting is like all about learning. It's all about teaching. And so that's like one really good thing about, if you want to learn how to be a leader, doing it in public accounting forces you to be a really good educator. Where I feel like that's maybe less a focus in private industry. But there's so much more complexity, I think, in private industry than in public accounting. So I kind of like that I got my leadership chops in the private industry world.
Yeah, I think your story is awesome. 5 years at GT, right? Was it GT? It was GT?
GT, but I only was there for 2 years, just under 2 years.
2 years. 2 years at GT. 2 years is 5 years. It's all the same thing. You know what I mean? Do you know have you been on an audit? Do you know how to do a tax return? Okay, you're good. You're good. You know what I mean? Like, that's enough. Go into the world. I think you did it the right way, though. I gotta say, I think you did it right. I'm not convinced I did it the right way.
I think we're all just figuring it out as we go. But
we're all just faking it until we make it.
That's right. We're literally all just making it up as we go. So, Kirk, I actually have a follow-up question that is a part of my array of questions for you.
Sure.
So you're in Simple Accounting Solutions now, and when we were talking about this, you had mentioned to me, you've kind of got almost like two groupings of clientele that you're working with, right?
Oh, yeah.
Small businesses, but then you also work a lot with high net worth individuals.
Yeah.
Could you maybe tell us a little bit about, from like a customer service or client service experience, like what's unique about working with high net worth individuals? Yeah,
this is, I was thinking about this yesterday. I was walking to the client, it's probably worth $500 million or something like that, right? And so, it's different, right? Because in a normal CPA business, and I'm servicing the general public, so I'm taking 1040s at 500 a pop, whatever. It's the normal work that most of us are used to. And then you got small business bookkeeping, maybe you have some bigger clients, CFO work, whatever. And then most of my time on many days is spent just servicing directly people who are high net worth, right? And high net worth is probably over 50 or 100 million. You know what I mean? In my world, like, it's probably you're worth 250 million, worth 500 million, worth $1 billion. Cool. Okay. Like, that's a different level of experience. It's not like, hey, like, I'm going to do your books, or hey, I'm going to give you a cash flow forecast. It's like, hey, we're going to go take out a $10 million loan. So can you like go do that? Like, sure. No problem. Okay. Like, so, or like, hey, Kirk, I need to move, 20 million over here. Yeah, 20 is maybe a big number. I need to move a couple million here, there, whatever. Like, and it's not only that, like, they're not giving directions. for most of the time. Like they're just like, listen, like it's your responsibility to make sure that the accounts have money in them. So take it from wherever, do it, whatever. Just make sure things work, right? You're the outer face to all external parties, whether that's you know the pension people or the tax people or the legal people or the investment people or whoever, right? They deal with all these people on financial matters, and you're probably the person they go to first before they go to the guy, right? They go to the client. So they're like, just talk to Kirk, just talk to Kirk, just talk to Kirk. And it's on the spot. It's not like, oh, office hours, I'll get back to you tomorrow. It's like, you text me at 9, I'm texting you back at 9:01, right? Unless I'm asleep or something like that. Like, you're always on call. There's no delineation really between, I mean, of course they understand they're people. They get it, right? You know, they know if they text you at 6 and you get back to them at 9 in the morning, they're not like pissed off or anything like that. But at the same time, there's an expectation that you are available when they're available. And so, like, perfect example, like yesterday, walk in, his client's like, okay, cool. We're gonna, I'm gonna be at the office for like an hour and a half, like middle of the day, middle of LA. Cool. I'm gonna get there at 9 to prep for when you get in at 11. I'm gonna get everything done between 11 and 12:30, and then when you leave, like around like 1 or 2, then I'm gonna go to lunch, and then I'm gonna go home. Basically, my whole day is centered around that hour and a half, right? And then it's, you kind of take it a level deeper because it's very relationship driven, right? With these people, like example yesterday, hey Kirk, we're going to the Hollywood Bowl in August. You should come, bring your kids. I want to go to Alaska, right? Do you want to come? Bring your wife, bring your kids, right? And that's typical, right? They're just like, just come with us. I had a buddy, and it's similar in other industries too. My best friend is in real estate, right? He's super successful, and he sold like a $50 million house to a billionaire from like Romania or something like that, from Eastern Europe. And I remember, like, so he makes a cool $1.5 million off the commission or something like that. And he's like, okay, the next summer the client calls him up, or the Romanian calls him up. It's like, hey, I rented out the Walton, like the Walmart family's yacht, for like 2 weeks. Fly you and your wife to Monaco, right, and come join me on this yacht. That's with crazy. Like, they have like 30 servants on the yacht. I'm like, it's a different level. You know what I mean?
Wait, so it's just, you got to do this?
No, it's like a buddy. Right?
Okay,
it's like but I mean, like, it's the same thing. Like, like my buddies are my clients. I'm going to Miami, right? Like, there's a world where like you're like, okay, it's 10,000 for a table, okay, this guy will pay it, like, okay, and then we'll do it the next night. Like, it's just a different level. You know what I mean? So you have the relationship where you're like trying to manage the relationship and the obligations of just being an individual that they like, know, and trust, right? The pro-advisors thing. And I mean, it has to be genuine. It has to be authentic. You can't like bullshit your way through. And then you also have to be really good on the business side as well. Understand their business, understand kind of, make sure things are not screwing up. The quickest way to get fired is to screw up. Right. So you can't screw up. So it's cool.
Yeah. There's a super high standard. And like, even your example that you gave about, hey, Kirk, I'm going to be in around noon and I'm going to be there for maybe an hour. Even the example you gave about like, I'm going to center my whole day around being on so that when they're there, there's no downtime, there's no waiting. They're just going to be getting whatever they need right then and there. And that is such a totally different paradigm, because like, I know juggling, I know like a couple of my friends who are, they've got maybe call it 4 or 5 clients that they're juggling at any given time. They're just negotiating calendars. They're like, hey, I'm sorry, something came up. Can we push this back to then? I feel like if you were to say, hey, can we push this meeting? I feel like you'd be told that you're fired. You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel like, I mean, maybe there's some flexibility, but like, I feel like
there's reasonability there, but I will move other people, right? So like today, like I have to go to the middle of LA to go scout locations with a company that's worth $100 million or something like that. So, like I had a lunch like scheduled previously, and then the owner calls me up yesterday. He's like, hey, let's go out and let's scout locations, and we're going to go to a super nice dinner, like super, and I was like, cool. Okay. I'll be there. I have to like call the other guy and be like, hey, listen, I know I pushed this yesterday. I need to push it again. Can we do like a breakfast or something? Right? But I mean, you're just flexible, and it's a very fluid thing, right? Now on the other side of that, the reason I do it is because it's very lucrative, right? It's a very, like, whatever the fees are for normal clients or normal day to day within market, like that stuff really, that market is really doesn't exist at that level. You know what, you kind of are just like, if you like me, we're going to do business. I'm going to charge some number that I want. You know what I mean? And you kind of just feel like this number, but that the number with dealing with those people is so much higher. You know, it's a multiplier of 10 or a multiplier of 20 or something like that. It's some crazy multiplier.
That is crazy.
It is. You know. So, do I get into my question for you, or do you? Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah. All right. I mean, it's really like, I mean, you touched on it first, right? Like, okay, so like I've only worked private, internal, or public audit tax, right? So what I've not worked is at a publicly traded entity, internal, right? So I think something really interesting you were talking about, like team dynamic. You have a team of 30, and that's a small team, right? I don't know that I've ever been on a team of 30 accountants. I haven't, right? So what is that like? It's a hierarchical thing. I understand that. Is it controller, VP, CFO? Do you even talk to the CFO, or is that just so high up that you don't care? Like, how does it work at public companies? And then the close process, you guys are driving towards the goal, and tell me about it. Tell me about your experience.
Yeah, it's been crazy. So I've worked at a couple different public companies, and so I'd say it really depends, right? So the largest one that I had an opportunity to serve a little bit of time, I was there for a short period of time to help them with their quarterly filing, but Medtronic was the name of the company. Very large company. I have a ton of respect for them. The team is top notch, and we're talking about a finance department of, I'm probably misremembering, but well over is it in the thousands, maybe hundreds? I don't. Yeah, it's huge, and that's like the whole finance org, right? So in an organization like that, I do not have conversations with the CFO, right? But in, the client that I'm serving right now, the CFO is essentially like two places above where I'm sitting, if that makes sense. So the control, it would go like usually it's like, it could be like the VP of finance controller, like that's one title. And then the next step up from there would be like the CFO.
Okay.
So a lot of times the roles that I'm playing, I'm either directly supporting a controller or supporting somebody who is supporting the controller. So I'm pretty close to working with controllers for those larger public companies.
Yeah.
But talking back to your question about like, what's it like working on such a large team? It's super interesting when you're talking about a team of like one or two accountants. Communication is important, right? Like we want to make sure we're staying in line and lockstep. But communication is so much more important when you're talking about 30 moving pieces. Right. So just to give you an example, all day yesterday, right? We're in the middle of close right now. All day yesterday, my primary responsibility was coordinating to ensure that the moving pieces are still on track, because there's so many dependencies that happen in the middle of a close.
That's right.
Right. So like, let's say we have to run our allocations, because allocations are super important for this company.
Yeah.
Well, I can't do my allocation. I can't even start my work until all of these, call it 10 checklist items are done first.
Like APs close and accruals are mid. You're allocating overhead to business units?
Right. Yeah, it's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of allocating for the purposes of proper statement in the P&L. And so it's a super critical.
Dependencies.
Right. Dependencies are so big. And so what ends up happening is I do spend a lot of my time making sure that we're having proactive conversations with people. Be like, are there roadblocks you're running into? What was... Maybe something technologically failed, or maybe somebody in the business isn't getting you the answer that you need, and there's all that kind of stuff. So I'd say communication is so important.
Are you an expert in fixing? Can you fix?
I would say I always like to refer to myself not necessarily as an expert, but I'm always willing to learn.
Yeah.
So, but my LinkedIn tagline is Metamucil for constipated finance processes, because I like to, I do like process improvement. I love being able to go upstream and fix what's happening up there. It's causing problems downstream. For everybody who doesn't know, like, especially when we're talking about large public company, finance is a recipient of a lot of data. We're a downstream process. We're one of the last places that information goes before it kind of finishes out its life cycle. And so we have to work proactively. If we're going to do our job well, we have to work more proactively with the people way upstream. So the best accountants work with salespeople, work with operations people, work with people in the business. And that's something that I like to do when I'm working with clients.
What about, like, I know there's a new, it's not a standard, it's like a measurement, right, of environmental measures. I forget what the term. Public companies have to
ESG.
report on their environmental impact of their activities, I think, and they're given a score.
Yeah.
Does the score help or hurt, or is this just guidance for investors
Yeah, that's an
who
excellent
want to
question.
invest in sustainable companies?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't really understand that.
Yeah.
You know?
So from what I'm remembering, and I'm not 100% tapped into this, but from what I'm remembering hearing, I think it's still just a proposal, and this is a proposal that the SEC, I want to say, is bringing to the. I think it's the SEC. Anyway, but they are proposing this. That it would be a requirement for public companies. What I'm hearing is it's really going to benefit the companies that are already, focused on ESG matters, environmental, social, and governance, because they already have the answers put together. It's going to start to really harm the people who maybe haven't been thinking a lot about that. So there's a little bit of political back and forth on whether or not this is actually going to be something that goes through.
Okay. So it's not law yet. This is still in negotiations, but it could be something in the future. And I thought that was pretty interesting. Would that be finance? Do you know if it's finance that would put something like that together, or is it some kind of really?
It would probably. Well, here's the thing. It would probably be a collaboration. And this is like the reality when you talk about, again, large public companies. Rarely do you ever work in a silo in those regards. Like, even when you're talking about just the standard financial reports, you got to be working with your FP&A team and your legal team and your human resources team. Like, you have to make sure that you're well connected. So it likely would be, a combination effort of working with the legal department and, if they have an ESG officer or something like that, it would be working with those people to put together the story. So
How, like, you said turnover was a big deal in public, right? Which I'm kind of surprised. If you land like a good job, internal, like finance or accounting in a public company, like, I would assume that job is pretty stable, right? Like, accounting is a notoriously stable position.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right?
And more where the turnover comes is less from layoffs and firing, more having to do with just brighter, greener pastures. So people leaving because they want to make more money elsewhere. So everybody knows, accounting is one of those relatively recession-proof industries. It's one of the last places for heads to get cut in a business. So yeah, it's a pretty lucrative field, and sometimes people just prefer to stay in and do the same thing they've always ever done. But other times they realize, like, ooh, I can actually make a little bit of money if I switch to another job. So
another big public company, maybe a competitor, right?
Yeah.
Do you have to worry about trade secrets or import? Like, I mean, you have to disclose as a public company, right? So a lot of that information's out there.
Yeah.
But do people steal for, like, process, procedures, or strategy?
It's an interesting dynamic. I'm connected with a couple larger companies here in the Minneapolis metro area. I've got a couple friends of mine who've worked at these large places, and I find that there almost is a camaraderie. I mean, obviously, if you're talking about working for a competitor, then it gets a little bit tricky. You don't really, you want to be careful about those things. But when you're talking about, like, for example, I had a conversation with some accountants at Cargill. Fun fact, Cargill, headquartered here in Minnesota, and I think it's the largest private company in the world. I could be wrong by that, but I think it's a massive company. Anyway, I had a great conversation with an accounting team over there, and they generously shared with me some of their policy and procedure manuals that they had put together as a good, like, starting point. So I think there is a lot of collaboration that happens amongst different companies.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I stole my EL from other firms. So.
Oh, is that right?
Did I say steal? I mean, I borrowed. I mean, I wrote with. I mean, I was given. Dude, talking about Minneapolis. So I'm in Southern California, and, like, I've never been to Minnesota. I've been to Michigan. Been to the lake, right? So I've done to Chicago. Minnesota's to the left of Michigan, of Illinois, and Chicago's in Illinois. So I don't know that I've been to Michigan either.
Yeah. So yes, we'll say west and east. But if you're looking
West
at
and east.
yeah, if you're looking at a map, I think you could say like left. Yeah,
It's left, right? West.
It's left.
It's
Yeah,
west,
it's left.
right?
It's west. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's west
yeah.
from Illinois. You are
Is
correct
it
about
close
that.
to the Canadian border, or how far is it from Canada?
Yeah.
Super close.
Yeah. So I think for me, I could drive. We could probably within like 6 or 7 hours. We could probably get to the Canadian border.
Okay.
So, yeah. We're not
Okay.
super
So you're not that close though. You're not like
no. So Minneapolis.
I'm 2 hours from Mexico.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Minneapolis is a little further south. It's almost. Yeah. It's if you look on it in a map, you'll see it's pretty far south.
Okay.
But.
And then the teams are it's gonna be the Bucks, right, which they were defending, they're not anymore, but they were 2 years ago, right? And Giannis is like a local hero, and you're hoping he signs like the super max or something like that, right?
Yeah, this is where I'm out of my wheelhouse. People who know me know that I'm like, go sports, yeah. I'm like, I don't know. So I say yes. I say I believe you. I believe you, Kirk. So.
It's he's a great story. And then what I'd say is like, so we were talking, and I didn't know anything about Minneapolis or the companies, and you're like, Target is headquartered there. I'm like,
can I read you a list?
What? Yeah, can you please read a list? Yeah, just so everybody knows. Put Minneapolis on the map.
Let's put a little spotlight on the greater metro Minneapolis area, just so you guys know how strong we are with publicly traded companies here. So we've got Target. We've got Best Buy. We've got General Mills, which if you didn't know, you might not know. Maybe you'd know General Mills. Look at any of those like breakfast products that you like, cereals that you own or you buy. General Mills probably.
Do I know General Mills? Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yes,
of
General
course.
Mills. So we got General Mills. We got United Health Group. We've got 3M, U.S. Bank, and then my former employer, C.H. Robinson. Shout out to C.H. Robinson.
Big trucking company.
Logistics.
Actually, C.H. Robinson knows one of my clients $2 million though. So if you can send me over a link up,
give him a call.
Yeah, I want you to hit him up.
Yeah. So the Minneapolis market, it is quite strong. So yeah, I think if anybody's looking for a place to work, we've got a great and strong economy. I mean, the U.S. in general is pretty strong right now. So
So, that's sorry to cut you off.
No,
I was going to say, like, I woke up this morning, pretty much daily routine, go to CNBC, jobs report stronger than expected, right? Markets are down because they're like, you're going to raise your rates. And I'm like, I was like, I came to my dad, I'm like, it's a recession, but the labor part of it is very strong, right? Which is different than 2008 or even 2 years ago, where there were just tremendous amounts of layoffs. Now I know there are layoffs happening because I could see it on LinkedIn, right? And I know it's hitting tech pretty hard. It's hitting, some of these other outfits. But I think if you're working at General Mills, like people need to eat cereal. You know what I mean? Or you're like, people need health. United Health Group, totally fine. Like a place like Target and Best Buy may be more exposed, but those businesses, especially like Target, they've fortified themselves over 20 or 30 years, where their competitors have pretty much left the space or like gotten killed. Like I'm very much a fan of what the Minneapolis companies are doing. Right, those are some really freaking solid. I think where do you pull talent from? Is it from Illinois, or where are you pulling? Michigan, University of Michigan, like where?
We've got a lot, even here at University of Minnesota. A lot of people.
Yeah. Gophers.
Yeah, that's right. I do know that because I went to the University of Minnesota. Go Gophers! Woo, woo.
Dude, you got a wrestling Brock Lesnar was from the University of Minnesota.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Minnesota's where it's at. Minnesota pride. So Kirk, not at all to change the subject, but a little bit to change the subject, just a tiny bit.
Sure.
I'm curious about tech stack. Can we talk a little bit about tech stack, specifically in your space? Like, what's like the go-to? I think you have some opinions or some ideas about tech stack. So you want to expound on those a little bit?
Oh yeah, I mean, I always make fun of my clients too. They're like, you should use Microsoft Teams. And I'm like, Teams is the worst, right? Like the video sucks, the chat is awful. So in general, I'm trying to go best of breed with this stuff. So Slack, Zoom, QuickBooks Online for the software, LastPass, Asana, we do. Sorry, let me try to think here. I do Dubsado for billing. That's okay. Like I've been trying it out. A lot of this stuff is kind of legacy from when I was starting out a couple years ago. So we do, yeah, Asana's project management, LastPass is passwords, Slack is internal communication, super huge, Zoom for team, the Google suite of products, and everyone uses. I have it on Gmail, like the emails. This is, I've really gone back and forth on that because historically speaking, prior to this, I was always on Outlook, right? A big believer in the Microsoft suite of products. I mean, just because Teams sucks doesn't mean Excel sucks. Excel's
Right.
great, right?
Yeah.
Word is great,
Yeah.
but the the email was one that was really hard for me to get away from, especially when I remember like them giving me, like, before I had my own thing, like they had me using Gmail at one of the outfits. I thought it was very Mickey Mouse, right? So subconsciously, what I'm thinking is, one, internal efficiencies, and then two, like, kind of perception of the software, because internally we're all remote. We're all in LA, but we're all remote.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want either internal work employees or external stakeholders to feel like I'm using inefficient or second-class software. Like, I will not use second-class software. I will use best-in-breed software. We have to look at this stuff every day, right? I'm not going to work through a program that is anything less than what I think is the best in the field, right? The best in practice. And so we use Ignite for document retention, document upload, like security. I feel like that's the best. Bill.com but there's operational and then there's internal, right? And it kind of mixes a bit, but I think, I've tried other stuff. Expensify, I couldn't get on board with. I'm like, some of these other softwares, like someone's like pitching like Jetpack Workflow or like Canopy, or, I know there are these other softwares that are out there. We use Drake for tax prep. Now, what I'll say about Drake is I have to go get AWS. I had to go get a externally hosted cloud software. So for like a month or 2 weeks in January, I'm like trying to figure out what the best cloud software is. Amazon Web Services, I think, is probably the best. Drake, I'm so on. I think we're going to move to Wolters Kluwer in the off season. Basically, we're still in the season because I'm still running until 9:15, 10:15. But when we have a moment to switch, I think I'm going to go CCH Wolters Kluwer because I think it's probably better.
And what do they provide? Wolters Kluwer isn't.
The ProFX, CCH Pro Systems. So they provide it's an audit tax software, right? So like, Drake is a tax software, but when I talk, I don't really care. You know what I mean? I just, like, my tax director is like, hey, Kirk, listen, like, this is fine, but we should really use this. Cool, let's use this. I don't care. I'm not doing the return. So,
right.
So I mean that's a lot of the tech stack right now, and those things that I've mentioned, I've used. And they drive. I mean, I've used it for a couple of years, and they drive. Like, I feel very strongly that is a very good tech stack. What did I miss? What are you using that I missed?
I was actually just about to ask you. Have you heard of LiveFlow?
I've not. Is that good? What is it?
Plug right now, and Anita, I think you're gonna really appreciate this little shout out. I'm actually gonna try to give a little spiel and a little shout out. I've been using them. I have one client that I'm working with right now. And but yeah, LiveFlow, great, because what it does is it automatically feeds your QuickBooks data into either Excel or Google Sheets, and so there's that direct integration. So for me, because I'm like putting together my management reporting packet, which I'm actually walking my clients through today, it's nice to have a direct refresh. It's great for reviewing financials, but it's also great for like pulling together like your own custom-made management reporting pack, where you don't want to have to like always have to rerun reports.
Really? So it's like I thought the macros internal within Excel could do that, could somehow connect, but maybe not.
I think essentially what LiveFlow is being is kind of that connection piece, because I don't know if the macro. I think because of like how QuickBooks operates, it might not allow that.
One other tech I will shout out is Keeper.
I've heard of
Ben Stein, who I think is the founder. He actually. So a quick story, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this. So Ben used to be a client, right, of mine. Cool. He was a CFO at a local company here, and I remember walking into his office some 5 years ago or 4 years ago, and we were like literally like, walking through how to do accounting, like, because he was fresh out of USC. And then a couple years later, he was like, I have an idea for a company, and like we met in downtown, and we just walked around like downtown Hollywood, just like talking about his idea, which became Keeper. That guy is super smart. I'm going to plug it because it's a quality control. It's kind of like auto. I guess it's auto review, but I think it's a better product, in my opinion. That being said, so live plug off keeper, live flow to pulls from just QuickBooks or QuickBooks Zero, all the softwares, or just
That's a great
from
question. I use it specifically for QuickBooks, but I imagine they work with Zero as well. Like, I don't know. It's a great question. I don't know.
pull into Excel, and then then you could populate the financial package basically. Because right now it's all manual, right? I mean, we're getting a little better because we'll do we'll set formulas on the templates like VLOOKUPs or whatever.
But in
But
theory, you're going to have to still run the reports out of
Mhm.
QuickBooks. And
Oh
then
yeah,
if you're going through a review or somebody's going through review and somebody's like, oh, we have an entry we have to post, you'll have to
yeah,
go and then now rerun all those same reports versus
yes,
LifeFlow. I can go, not only can I drill in, this is another really cool thing. In your review, you can drill in. You'll be like, why is there a credit balance sitting in this asset account, right? You can drill in, and it's going to hyperlink you directly to the report in QuickBooks where you find the transactions. Super cool.
interesting.
Super cool.
What's the cost on it?
It's like, I think I pay like $14 a month, but I'm on like
Okay,
an intro plan right now, so it's like $20 a month. It's like priced per client per month, so it's like
per client
really
per month.
affordable.
Yeah.
When you think about how much time you save, it's like, oh, this is a no brainer. No
Yeah,
brainer.
I'd say about that? It's a real quick beginning of the year I was talking about dad about efficiency, right? And
Mm-hmm.
okay, this year we're gonna focus on being really efficient, like creating rules, all this stuff or whatever. And I'm like, there's a lot of value in doing things the hard way. Like especially when you're new, there is a ton of value. Like I don't want, for people who are fresh out of school or 1 year, I almost want them to have to
Struggle.
prove that you're good enough. Yeah, you have to prove you're good enough to automate. Like if you just straight up go to automate, you miss all the learning of how this is put together. How is a sausage made? You just want the hot dog, right? But they've got to, you've got to struggle a little bit. So that's one thing I would say. I kind of like to see people. Okay, prove to me you can put it together. Prove to me you know what to do it, and then we can go to automate. Anyway, that's an aside. I think I've got another question for you, Tony. Do we still have time for another question?
We have time for one more question, and then we'll transition.
I mean, my question to you is, it's really about Equip, right?
Yeah.
About the company you're doing, you're creating, and kind of where you hope to take it, right? I know that it's for someone who, and there are a lot of people like this who are out on their own, their gig, whatever, and that means that they still have, they're required to file probably a Schedule C or something like that, and when they go to look, they don't know how to put everything together in a financial statement format. They're probably just looking at profit, losses, expenses. Does Equip is it kind of what were the yellow books, the for dummies, the accounting for dummies books, right? Accounting for dummies, and it's like an online course, right, for mom and pops.
That's right. Yep. So you nailed it. Equip. So fun fact: the name Equip comes from accounting, equipping, accounting, equip. So Equip. We are here to equip you to be able to do the finance work in your own business. I don't think there's something out there that really addresses this need. Like you said, it is a need in the marketplace, especially with the prolific expansion of the gig economy. Yeah. You have a lot of self-employed individuals, freelancers, side hustlers, and even a small portion of what I'd call lifestyle entrepreneurs. These are the people who they're not looking to kill themselves, trying to build this empire. They're building a brand or they're building a business because they take pride and ownership in owning something, and their aspiration is they want to have control over something, and as long as it makes money for the family, cool. Mm-hmm. So there is a subsegment of those people, and I think too often we can tend to shame those people and say, well, if you're not growing leaps and bounds, you're not doing the right thing. And I'm like, yeah. Everybody has their own reason for doing stuff. Back off a little bit.
Yeah, seriously.
So we've got these lifestyle entrepreneurs, these freelancers, these side hustlers, but who's out there educating or providing education as an option for doing their own bookkeeping, doing their own finance work? Because so often we jump to, oh, you need to hire somebody. And I would agree 95% of the time, you probably will benefit from hiring somebody. But I'm a huge advocate of educate first, and then after the person is educated, let them make an informed decision about what they want to outsource versus what they want to do themselves.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so Equip is here to do that. We're here to educate and empower people to do that finance work themselves. And one of the ways that we think about it is, accounting. I think for a lot of people in small business, we assume accounting equals tax or accounting equals math.
Yes. Yes.
Both of those things are not 100% true. Like there's elements of truth to them, but they're not really the truth.
Right.
The real truth is accounting is storytelling.
Yeah.
You're a financial storyteller.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what we want to do is we want to empower them to write, review, and report the financial story to the three primary audiences: management, government, and investors. And so the premise of the course is let's empower you to do those things, and let's get you together with a couple other people in a cohort, and we'll take you through, probably 3 months where we'll be kind of an intensive, and then a 9-month period of follow-up to make sure that you're keeping on track with those things.
And you're leading the groups, right? You yourself are leading the groups, asking the questions, helping them to tell the story. It's a 3-month on and then a 9-month kind of legacy off, and after the year, then they're out of the program, they graduate type deal.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm considering, depending on where the needs are and if people have interest in this, one of the things I'm considering is maybe an ongoing membership so that you have that connectedness with other peers, but then also keeping up to date on things that are changing in the accounting and finance world that you should be aware of as a,
How do you market?
That's an excellent question. I'm still working on
this. This is the marketing right here.
This is one of them. Getting the Ask an Accountant podcast out there, but yeah, I did a free webinar probably about a month ago now. I'm slicing and dicing that up, so there's going to be an even easier way of watching that. But I basically take people through empowering their decision on what they want to outsource versus what they want to learn to do themselves. So
yeah. I mean, I think I said last week, I'm a big fan of owners kind of knowing or understanding accounting. Doesn't mean they have to do it; they just have to understand it. I mean, I've told them, I'm like, you should do this. No, I mean, when the rubber hits the road, 90% of them are not going to do it because they just don't want to do it.
Right.
But I at least want them to understand it, right? Which I think this is probably key for. You got to figure out how to market, how to mass market it. You know what I mean? I think that's...
Yeah, and reach them with... Because the way that I always said it, and I tell people this all the time, I'm not actually building a business. I'm building a brand. Because I think the issue and the reason why we don't have penetration in this space, where we don't have good education out there, is because we have milquetoast, boring, blah brands trying to deliver education. They're getting all stuck in the mud of we got to teach them debits and credits. Fun fact, throughout the entire course, I'm not going to mention debits or credits. It might be a footnote that we talk about, but it's not going to be your main thing, because I don't think that's what small business, people running.
No, you're going to talk about categories, and you're going to talk about vendor names, and you're going to talk about banking, and you're going to I mean, it would probably be second level to talk about reconciliation. I mean, I feel like you have to talk about it because you have to have some control over it.
Right.
But it's probably just the cosmetics of, what does this look like? You know what I mean? Do you have a billion accounts in your chart of account, or, what are the important categories, right? And how do you philosophically think about that? And I think that's, I mean, I think it's great. I think you just got to figure out how to reach target audience, right? Gig workers. I remember, wanting to, at one point a couple years back, I was like, I'm going to start, Collective is doing it now. Basically, they're like, we'll do a done for you service for entrepreneurs, basically, because they'll do the S corp and they'll do the arbitrage on the payroll or whatever, and that's how they'll win. And I was like, that's an easy way to win with the gig. I never did it because whatever, direction went different. But if you can figure out a way to mass market to the solopreneurs, the same people that Collective, I think, are marketing to, and they go through the Facebook, right, and through the social media, you may be able to hit there. You got to get a finished product, though, and then it doesn't scale. It doesn't scale with you being the leader. You gotta kind of have a course that stands its size. Steve Pope will probably, super expert in this, right? Dang, I'm super excited to see this product. See what's up. Let me know when it's ready. I mean, I'm gonna go. I'll give you the, I don't know, whatever, the $100 or whatever it is, just to look at the content.
I was gonna say, so my goal, one of the goals that I have, and I'm saying this now out into the world, so hopefully I can actually follow through on this. My goal is to try to get this done by the end of the summer. Potentially launching in September. because I have all the content. It's just a matter of bringing it together and actually recording the videos and all that kind of stuff. So you've given me.
And then you got to find the people. You got to find
right.
like the 3 clients that you're like 3 clients, like mom, dad, brother, right? Want to take it through
Just
this
go
course,
through it.
you know?
Go through it. Yeah. Another thing that I'm hoping for is I see, and maybe you can resonate with this, but as an accountant, as somebody who is dealing with, inquiries all the time for, hey, can you be my accountant? Can you do this service for me? I'm sure you run across a number of people who are very cost conscious. And then you go to quote them, you go to say, well, this is the price. And they're like, I don't think I can afford that.
Yeah.
One of the ideas that I have is like, I think those people could benefit from a quick referral to be like, well, hey, you know what? That's what it costs for somebody to do it for you. You can also learn to do it yourself and save yourself quite a bit of money. If cost consciousness is the issue, education is a great alternative.
Yeah. I think that's a super good way to get in leads into the product, right? Because there is that subsection, and it's probably your base bookkeeping rates on a monthly, I think, start at 250 to 500, right? I mean, I don't know that you can really go below 250. I certainly don't, you know what I mean? Between the 250 and the 500, there's a subsection of customers probably making 1 to 2 to 300,000, right? That's kind of, I think, where that pricing goes in. And you maybe would get those. It's like a commodities market. When I look at it, and I have like a number of clients that are like at that level. It's not because I'm making money. It's because I'm betting that in the future they're going to be rich. You know what I mean? It's like I'm betting on their future.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because as they grow and develop, like their business that makes 300, makes 500, that makes 700, that makes $1 million, that makes $2 million, that makes $5 million, and we're gonna do business for 30 years.
Right.
So that's where I'm thinking about it with them. It's not like trying to make money. It's like I'm betting on you as an entrepreneur, as
that's a great
someone who, you know what I mean? Because you can't. But you could also say, but like people who are cold off the street who are like, hey, can you do it for 250? I don't know you. Like, you should go check out Equip. Right? You should go check out this DIY. Because I've had some people say, hey, I want to do it myself. I'm like, cool, you should. Maybe you should go figure out how to go do it though. You know what I mean?
And it's like, you're probably experiencing the struggle that I experienced before starting this brand. It's like, who's out there doing it? Who's out there teaching people?
No, nobody. The internet, Google is the one.
Like
at
best, you're going to go onto YouTube and you're going to type in how to do bookkeeping, and what you're going to get is like all the big box bookkeeping firms. They're going to be like, here's how you do bookkeeping, and then they give you this like really trite answer that doesn't actually help you at all. You're just like,
it's like a generic,
right?
It's like a generic.
And the thing is that they get you, and they're like, well, okay, if you want to learn more, feel free to reach out to us. It's like, well, that was the whole point of why you put the video on, right? Like, so they're not really wanting to empower you to do it yourself. So I'm like, we got to do this. We got to educate the market.
You could probably charge a monthly on it, I think, because it replaces the outsource, and they're exchanging their time for the learnings basically at kind of a similar cost. And then it has to make sense as you scale. I mean, the first part, the pilot, who cares? But I think as a product, the economics have to be there. That's super interesting. I'm excited to see what you come up with. Yeah, we'll take a look.
I'm excited too. Well, I'm excited for your excitement. It's fueling me. I feel like I'm a better person now because of our conversation and our interview. So, Kirk, thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you so much.
This has been great. Legit. So, Kirk, I want to give you an opportunity now to give us some words of wisdom. And when I say us, I'm talking about a very specific audience. And this audience there's an accountant that's listening, that's out there, and they're looking to launch on their own. What words of wisdom would you give to that person?
I mean, we were all you at one point, right? So everyone's been in those shoes, who I think has done maybe something different. Key things, relationships matter. Relationships are the number one thing, in my opinion. You have to have good relationships with your clients, right? And your book or your relationships, that will carry you more than the technical will carry you, because the technical can be replaced, but the relationships can't. So, one, I would develop the relationships. Two, I would just say that most, and I think, you're looking to providing value is kind of super cliche. You're like trying to provide value, and then like people are like, well, you can bill on value. I think in the start, you're just trying to get market share, regardless, kind of really of what the fees are. You're just trying to build top line.
Hmm.
So you're doing stuff you probably, like currently, you were doing 5 years ago, right? So the work that you were doing 5 years ago is probably the work that you're going to be doing when you go out on your own, right? You kind of take a step back. You don't necessarily have to step in at that same level of work that you were doing at the private side, because you're trying to build relationships, clients, book,
Hmm.
right? Different for everyone, but that's how I built it. Was I went, had Anchor, and then I just was doing work for everyone I knew, my buddies, my friends, whatever. Listen, trial by fire with a lot of this stuff,
Hmm.
right? There, you got to be willing to like be wrong, right? And
Hmm.
like, let me give you like wrong is pain, right? I mean, I often would tell myself like, the more pain I feel, the better the lesson is. And like, I've been in serious pain from screw ups. In fact,
Hmm.
I wrote a quick aside, but like this week, like a we put the wrong refund in the wrong account, and it was like a $10,000 refund, right? So I had to write a $10,000 check to a client, right, and be like, "Yeah, here you go, sorry." Okay,
Oh
like
my
go send it.
goodness.
So like, yeah, it's all, I'm like, sounds like, "Oh yeah, sorry about that." I'm like, "It's cool," but then I got to call the other guy who got the refund. And luckily, I know them both, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Hey, like, what'd you do with that 10 grand?" He's like, "Oh, Kirk, sorry, I spent it." I was like, okay, cool. We'll work out a payment plan over like 12 months or what.
Oh
I
my
mean, this is great.
goodness.
So, I mean, pain, right? It's pain with that. It's pain with getting yelled at. It's pain with getting fired. It's pain with
Hmm.
you develop deep relationships and then you get fired and then all of a
Hmm.
sudden they're not friends anymore or whatever. You know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
the number one thing though, definitely, I think focusing on the
Relationships.
relationships that you have,
Hmm.
that are just, with the existing clients or with your friends or with
Hmm.
entrepreneurs, like making sure that those are rock solid. And then when you go out on your own, then you can really rely on those relationships
Hmm.
to drive everything.
That's huge. And it cannot be understated just how important it is to have relationship. And especially if you're doing your own thing, to be able to, yeah, to have those friends. Quick shout out. If that is you and you're looking for more friends, I would love the introduction. I'm sure Kirk,
This
you'd probably
guy.
feel the same way.
Yeah, no new friends for me. I'm kind of on the Drake line right now,
Is that
but yeah,
right?
definitely for Tony for sure. I mean,
Yeah, right, right. Two thumbs up this way, right
yeah,
here.
this guy right here.
Oh, that would be so great. Well, curious to hear this. If people wanted to reach out or they wanted to follow you, they want to get to know you better,
Yeah,
where is
yeah.
the best place on the interwebs for them to do so?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm definitely. I mean, LinkedIn is the obvious because I'm on there. I've got a presence, following whatever. I've got a website, kirkcolecpa.com. Email Kirk at kirkcolecpa.com, and I think just through that, or I think my phone number 831-345-2290 is public, so you could just text me or whatever. You can call me, text me. I'll talk to anybody. You know what I mean?
Perfect.
Doesn't mean I can help you, but I'll talk
Right.
whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
let's we could talk, and I'll see. I'll give you my just flat out recommendations. Or my thoughts or whatever. I'm
That's
not
awesome.
for free. Right? Don't worry. Like I don't charge until we really like. We have to go
Really
on a
get into
date
it.
first. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
And then
I'll
it's
pay
on.
for the first date.
Right, right. And then it's on you. No.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Kirk, thank you so much.
Oh, it's
Hopefully
been great.
people will have an opportunity now to reach out, follow you on LinkedIn, all those places. But Kirk, it's been lovely. Thanks
Awesome.
for
Thank
breaking
you
the
so
ice
much.
for me in
Oh,
letting me learn how to be interviewed on a podcast. This is great.
oh, you should.
Um,
Yeah.
this is
We'll
good.
do it again. We'll do it
Perfect.
again.
Well, yeah,
All
we'll
right.
definitely have to do that. Okay. Well, I hope everybody has found value in our episode today. If you have a pressing accounting question that you'd like future guests to answer, you can go ahead and email them to me at tony@equip.com. That's ACCQUIP.com. Also, if you are an accounting professional or you know somebody who might be interested in coming on the show, please reach out to me as well. I want to thank everybody again for tuning in. And as always, keep calm and keep your clothes on.